Moving on, and I was also joined by Jeff Peterson of Heartland Farm Partners on Wednesday to break down some of the top stories in the grain markets. Planting progress, advice for marketing old crop, and current updates in the ethanol industry were all on the table for discussion.
As we dig through everything, we like to go right through, since none of us have been through this, and we say, let's identify the stuff we can look at. And we take a look at kind of the bottlenecks in the markets, and we start off on the ethanol side first. And, we had the ethanol numbers out this week, came in at 537,000 barrels. That's a new record low, and that came down from 563,000 barrels is where we were the previous week, which is down about 4.6%. But to kind of put that in perspective, Troy, that's down about 48.1% since the middle of March. And that's kind of the standard we've been using going back to the middle of March and looking at that. So we've had a big pullback there. But then we step over and we look at the gasoline demand side, and there's some positive things happening there. This week the new numbers came out from EIA today at 5.86 million barrels per day. And that's actually up 15.7%. It looks like the low went back in on April 3rd. And so we're at 15.7%. So that's a positive thing. And let me talk about why it's positive. So if we think that about a 10% of that gasoline is blended with ethanol, and it's a little bit less than that as you go across everything, but that means we need about 586,000 barrels per day. And if you recall, the number I just said was 537,000 barrels per day. Mm-hmm. So what we actually have going on is we've got more demand that's actually happening than what we currently have for the supply being produced. And we saw that in the ethanol stocks. That's the other thing we've been watching, the ethanol stocks. The ethanol stocks came in at 26.332 million barrels. And that was a very nice drawdown from where we were last week. And as a result of that, what we're seeing is that we're saying, you know what, it looks like maybe at least from the demand side, the overall numbers, we may have actually this week, Troy, put in our lowest number on the ethanol production side.
As far as planting goes, could you give us a sense of how it's progressing not only across the state, but also nationally? What's the latest?
Yeah, let's take a look nationally and actually getting off to an excellent start. You never have that perfect year where everybody is going, but this year is getting off to a very nice start. On the corn side, 27% planted. That's versus on the corn nationally versus 5-year average at 20%. Nebraska is running along well. We're not running as fast as some of the other states. We're at 20% complete versus a 5-year average of 16%. Believe it or not, Minnesota is leading the charge. They had a big week last week. And we don't have this happen a lot, but it does happen where they get off to a really good start. One of the things we're going to have to talk about, though, down the road, Troy, is what that's going to do to prevent plant. We are thinking that there's going to be more acres up in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota that's probably going to get planted than maybe what we were thinking before. North Dakota is still having a few issues, but it's getting off to a good start. And soybeans are getting off to a good start, too. Nationally, 8% across the nation compared to a 5-year average of 4%. And actually, we're doing really well on the bean side in Nebraska at 4%. And actually, normally this time of year, we only have about 2% planted.
Yeah, it seems to be plugging along a lot better than it was last year, that's for sure. Okay, so some folks watching right now may still have some old crop to market. What are some selling strategies that you could share with us right now? Because it is a time unlike any other, that's for sure. So if we could start with corn.
Yeah, so let's start off on the corn side first. I think one of our first things that we want to look at is basis is going to be a concern. And I think what that means is that we're going to have to work on getting that basis locked up on the old crop bushels, I would say. And then I would say be patient yet on the futures price. So think of it, we got the cash plus the basis, or futures plus basis equal our cash. And let's get that basis set, and let's be patient here yet on the future side. I think we'll get some little bounce. We might have to ride this thing a little bit lower, but I think we'll get a little bounce based off some weather, some problems coming on later in the growing season.
Okay, and for soybeans?
And a similar thing on soybeans. I would also get the basis locked up there too. Earlier, if it hadn't been because of the problems we're having with the slaughter numbers, we'd have said probably be a little patient yet and hope that maybe China steps in and buys some. But I'd say because of the uncertainty about what the slaughter numbers are going to do, we better get the basis locked up. And we can be patient there also on the future side there also, Troy.
Okay. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Last week, we saw the oil futures contract dip into the negative. Is that something we ever have to worry about happening with grains?
Well, that's a great question. And as we dig into that, so let's just talk about the futures contracts. The futures contract, if you're long futures, if you stay in that contract long enough, you can be delivered upon and end up with the physical commodity. And if you're short and you stay short long enough, you may have to physically deliver or bring bushels against that contract. But the way the thing it's set up, it's a little bit different on the grains than it is on the oil. In order to be able to deliver, you'd have to have delivery stocks available within those delivery locations up and down, the Mississippi River and the Illinois River. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we'd have to have that risk because those bushels would already be there. What happened on the crude oil side was really kind of a function of space, storage space. And actually there's many traders out there, Troy, that would look for opportunities when that spread between, that nearby month and that next deferred month gets too far out of whack. If it gets too far out of whack and they can buy it and they can pay the storage on it, and then they can go ahead and redeliver it the next month, it really becomes a risk-free trade. So I don't think we've got the risk there that they had over on the crude oil side.
Sure, sure. And finally, Jeff, talk to our audience for a minute, because there are farmers out there that are really hurting because of this pandemic. So any final advice or any words of encouragement, anything that you would like to say to the folks watching?
Yeah, definitely. This is a great opportunity. They just need to take a deep breath. There's been some big challenges that they've had that have that they've been through. Know that they're not able to go ahead and handle this all on their own, and nobody expects them to. Reach out to, their faith leaders, reach out to their friends to go ahead and build that support network, and know that there's always going to be opportunities that are going to come up that are going to surprise us. So just like last year, middle of May, prices got down to, 335 on the futures and then rallied all the way up to 475 because there was weather problems. And I'm not saying we're going to have planting delays this year. What I'm saying, though, Troy, is that there's always the opportunity to see hot, dry conditions come in. Even as bleak as everything looks, there's an opportunity that this market still can bounce. I'm not saying that it may not go lower later as we get into the fall if we got all these acres planted, but I think there will be some better opportunities to price than where we're at right now.